Sam's Bulldog here. It's September 7, 2017. Ben Shapiro, the conservative commentator, unfortunately for him, mentioned Sam Harris on a podcast. It's about a 3-minute clip that I'm going to lift from Ben Shapiro talks about God, religion, and atheism. Starts off asking about are metaphysics important for conservative belief. Of course, Shapiro says yes. Just a reminder that metaphysics is defined as transcending physical matter or the laws of nature. As, for example, good and evil are inexorably linked in a metaphysical battle across space and time. Okay, so we're talking about the zero evidence area. An opinion he's entitled to. I will point out what he gets wrong that isn't a matter of opinion. It's pretty embarrassing.
You love that you have a relationship.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, because all the time we hear, especially from young conservatives, well, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal. Mm-hmm. Well, I just want to focus on policy that works. And there seems to be a metaphysical ignorance or a neglect of metaphysics.
I agree.
Do you think that there needs to be a metaphysical basis for conservatism?
I think that if you want to think it through for more than 5 minutes, yes. Because I think
Okay, so he thinks you need God talk to be a conservative. He's entitled to that opinion. I would totally disagree. I was a non-believing conservative for quite a long time.
you can live in the political world and not really think about the bases of your thought. But, I mean, it's fascinating always when you talk to people who aren't religious or who disparage the Judeo-Christian tradition upon which this entire culture was built. And
that's laughable. By no measure is that true. We were conceived in liberty, and our founding documents are secular. I'm not going to rant. I'm too tired. The absurdity of that claim. Yes, the backstory of America since its founding is that almost everyone was culturally Christian. So everybody who plucked a chicken, to quote Sam Harris, was a believing Christian. You don't need to be a believing Christian to pluck a chicken.
They'll use Judeo-Christian terms, right? They'll use Judeo-Christian definitions of good and evil. They'll use Judeo-Christian notions of rights that don't exist in the absence of Judeo-Christian culture, right? They don't exist anywhere else on planet Earth for all time.
He just took ownership for everything that's right about America and its founding documents and what it stands for, of the believing Christian, when the whole enterprise was to keep that away from government explicitly. And that's what's great. So I respectfully disagree.
And you know, the idea that you haven't really thought these things through, it's dangerous. I mean, every political philosophy is based on a certain conception of human nature and humanity's place in the world and human value more than anything else. I mean, the foundational statement for all of Western civilization is the very beginning of Genesis, that God is made in man, that man is made in God's image.
Right.
Once you do that, you can talk about the value of man, the rights of man, what is man put here to do. But if you don't believe any of that, if you just believe that man is sort of...
That was absurd. How long do you want me to go on for? You're going to claim the Old Testament granted us a lot. Are you kidding me? Have you read it recently? Yes, there's some historical basis. Yes, the Egyptians came up with the great idea to let the common man into heaven too. He'd work harder and so on. Thriftier, working class. Yes, Christians seized on that more, and so on. And yes, you could even argue in some circumstances that's a good thing. But we don't need any of that talk. We don't need that book at all to write our founding documents and to identify as Americans and so on. Stop claiming the past, ownership of everything in the past. It's an absurdity. America is the purest, most physical form of the exact opposite of those terrible bunch of ideas. I mean, Jesus, and you're a conservative? That's some bifurcated brain you got there, bro.
Sort of a random assemblage of atoms that happened along, because the universe is random, there are lots of iterations.
So, he just said the word random twice because that's pejorative in Faith Headland. There isn't anything random about the universe, so near as we can tell. At the quantum level, there may be. But there is no random event. Everything has a cause. So you just said random twice because you think it means something. It doesn't mean anything, and it certainly doesn't mean anything in the context you're talking about now, and you got it wrong. And you're about to use that word a few more times, I think. It's really funny, actually.
Of it, then I find a hard time making the moral argument against, for example, things like slavery or abortion or tyranny.
He can't come up with good secular reasons for abortion, which he's against, of course. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. Abortion, what else did he say? Tyranny. I think the host says capital punishment. In other words, we need God talk to weigh in on this. Okay? Not our own minds, not our own moral compass, which we all have. Don't rely on that. Let's go back to those books. Let's go back to those ancient books. They must be telling us something. Sad. Not only sad, absurd. Absurd and causing harm.
Or murder, even.
Or capital punishment on the flip side.
Capital punishment. If
you can't come up with a good secular reason why murder should be illegal or immoral or unethical, you actually need the Old Testament to make that determination. Ben, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Sorry. You're pretty sharp dude. You can make 1,000 secular arguments. 10,000. And guess what? We don't need 10,000.
Are basically just an and, unless you're a Jainist and you believe all forms of life should equally be protected. But that's a religion too. If you believe like a secular version of that, then okay, I guess I buy it. But otherwise, you have to explain what makes human beings.
This is hilarious. He goes on and plays like this moral, ethical impulse hierarchy game in his own head, and thinks that Jainism is at the top because they're pacifists. It's a fucking truck near me. This is classic. He thinks because they're pacifists, they're on some kind of moral high ground. And more proof positive, this guy doesn't really, not interested in ethical hierarchies. Interested in what his ancient book says about it. Okay? You don't think that's dangerous? Pacifism is not the high bar of ethical behavior, because sometimes you got to do some pretty ugly things. Okay? Must I give examples again about this? Okay. Absurd. Terrible.
Special, and why is that specialness worthy of protection?
It does lead.
Why is our specialness worthy of protection? I need an ancient book to tell us why preservation of human life is worth it. This particular book. Not that book. This book. Not this book, that book. Oh, no. I'll read this part of this book and that part of that book. That'll tell you. Oh, but don't read it this way. Don't take that part literal. You know what? Fucking asshole.
To this, what it seems to me disingenuous determinism. That seems to be the logical conclusion of that materialist thinking. But
and disingenuous is the right word, because I think that what ends up happening, it's very weird, is when you talk to a lot of people who are atheists. Like I read Sam Harris's books, and I've met Sam, and I think
Here we
Sam's
go.
a smart guy. And when I read what Sam has to say, a lot of what he has to say is based on just an assumption.
Oh yeah, speaking of disingenuous, I read Sam Harris, dude. Low. Now watch what he gets wrong. It's astounding.
Of free will. There's an assumption that you can choose otherwise, that you are in control of your own life, and that you should live a moral life, that he has constructed for you his version of what morality looks like. Alan Dershowitz sort of has a similar model. And the problem is, where are you getting this free will stuff in a materialistic universe in which you're just a random assemblage of atoms? Like, where's this free will?
He accuses Sam Harris, who wrote a best-selling book about the illusion. It's an illusion of an illusion, as he put it. Accuses him of signing on to the free will idea. Then throws Dershowitz's name in. The reason he's bringing up Dershowitz is Dershowitz had the balls also to quote the Stanford book of Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy by saying it's moral to torture at times, the ticking time bomb scenario. You're commingling stories because you're grasping to pick up names for whatever reason.
Coming from? Where do you get that, and how do you square that with materialist version of reality? I think that the best proof of God, I've always said this, I think the best proof of God to me is is sort of a Cartesian notion that you are a thinker, you are a being.
I can acknowledge myself.
Right. You are a self, right? You're not just a random assemblage of stuff that wakes up new every morning. And
this is really hilarious, too, because then he I think he says he's signing on to mind-body, like, duality, which also is hilarious. I guess he's entitled to his opinion. That's impossible. Okay. Or let me put it another way. Zero evidence. Absurd.
And that if you have a hamburger, you're a different person than you were 1 minute before because you just put some new stuff in your body, right?
Then he claims that you're the same person you are yesterday. That's impossible because who you are is brain states, and brain states change whether we like it or not, whether we eat or not, sleep or not, and so on. So you, in a very real sense, you cannot be the person you were yesterday. Okay? So he gets that wrong. I mean, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? And the more, by the way, the more and more they learn about the brain, the more clearer into focus the absurdity of what he just said becomes.
Right. The notion that you are a coherent human being with the capacity to think and the capacity to control your behavior and the capacity to change, that's the basis of all of civilization. You take away that basic Augustinian notion of free will and it's all over.
I couldn't agree.
And what's interesting is, so he gets it wrong, totally puts Sam on the wrong side of free will because he probably just got it wrong. And then at the end, he sums it up the way that he should have been going all along, which is by saying, why is Sam telling everybody we don't have free will if we don't have this Augustinian view of taking ownership for your deeds, etc.? The murderer is truly guilty, and the baby killer is evil per se because of his free will. We need that to keep everybody in line. So it's interesting that he totally gets Sam wrong. He claims Sam on the wrong side, which I mean, I don't know if I'm prepared to forgive him for that, because he should never have brought him up to begin with, because Sam and everybody who understands the science and admits to it realizes we can't have free will. There's never even been a sufficient explanation of what people are claiming. That's how impossible it is. Determinism and so on, the one-way nature of time since the beginning of time, as far as we know, entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, all these things make free will impossible. The past is immutable, and it could not have been different. Okay, so Dustin Johnson, number one golfer in the world, misses a 1-footer on Sunday. Okay, that's a rarity. Probably misses one 1-footer every couple of years or so, or even rarer still. But if we rolled back the universe and put it in exactly the same place, he'd miss it again, right? He's not getting a second turn. This is what the immutability of the past implies, okay? It would happen over the same outcome. If you put the universe in the exact same place, what different could happen? Nothing. It would happen the same way over and over again. We don't have free will. We can't have it. Let's see where he goes.
Three more. So, you've read all the books. You've read St. Augustine and Descartes and all these people. Most people haven't read all the books. If you're a young conservative, either you're on campus or you're in high school or something, you want to join the vast right-wing conspiracy, you want to get your card, I keep mine in my wallet all the time. What should you do? What should you... And I don't just mean what books you should read, obviously you should do that too, but what should the would-be young conservative be doing right now?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing you should do is work hard. I think working hard is basically the first notion